Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Heldt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Hey, welcome back to the podcast. This week, my guest is Michael Mendelson, and he is a partner with Outside GC. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks very much, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Mike, what made you get into law?
Sure, that's a great question, really, because I did not come to law by the traditional route. I studied mechanical engineering at university, and I have a master's degree as well in foreign policy and international relations. I thought I was going to go into defense and intelligence. I was going to be the next super spy, whatever. And that's when the Cold War ended and a lot of that stuff dried up.
Right.
So for a period of time, I went into business development, international business development, focusing on former Soviet Union opportunities, which at that time was really interesting. But I had colleagues and professors, particularly in graduate school, who were attorneys, and I was just so impressed by their focus, their analytical thinking, as well as their well-roundedness and just overall intelligence. And I thought I could do something with this. I could take the background that I have and some of my business work experience and apply it to law and find an interesting way to do it. And I have. I mean, it wasn't always easy right from the bat because, as I said, I didn't come from a traditional background of pre-law and then law, and I didn't necessarily want to go the traditional route, the big firm partner or go into litigation. But I've managed to have a very great career so far in a variety of global businesses, working where I still get to stay involved with technology companies, and so it allows me to dip into that engineering side of me and cross-border transactions, which is sort of the diplomatic element because you're dealing with different business and legal cultures, as well as just overall grounded in the law.
Mm-hmm. So, in doing this, and now you're a partner at Outside GC. Can you tell us what Outside GC is and what you guys do and kind of the mission behind you guys?
Absolutely. Outside GC is in many ways has a unique value proposition, I think, in the legal market. We are not a traditional brick and mortar firm. We are a virtual firm and have been since the firm was founded over 22 years ago. And there's approximately 90 of us nationwide, with most of us concentrated in New England, Greater New York, Mid-Atlantic, and North and South California, with some other folks spread out in the country. We service both small, medium-sized businesses, entrepreneurs, as well as more established multinationals on a variety of issues. We're basically a virtual business law firm. So we don't do litigation, we don't do hardcore tax issues, but in terms of the general issues that new and long established businesses face, that is really what we handle. And so some of those are specific subject matter, substantive areas, like, for example, an employment law issue or a commercial contract or a government contract. But it's also being that outside GC, that outside general counsel. So providing those general business and business strategy related services, being, I hate to use the Godfather term, but it's kind of like a consigliere in that regard. Okay. We're a strategic advisor looking at things from a legal perspective, trying to help business owners and business leaders make informed decisions within their risk tolerances. So
they come to you. I'm assuming you guys, would help with, business formation, contracts. If there's understanding that, okay, hey, we are not necessarily in, in the courtrooms and things like that, but you'll help them with a lot of the other, I'm going to say, blocking and tackling of things that need to be done,
Yes.
for businesses.
We want to keep you out of court. We want to help you resolve things amicably. We want to keep those costs down. So absolutely. And I think when it comes to business formation too, there's a variety of issues. It's not just the simple filing of the paperwork, drafting the articles and the bylaws, or an operating agreement if it's an LLC, but also what's the relationship of, between and among the founders? How are you handling your seed investment and your relationship with your friends and family investment and your seed round, and then preparing for a Series A? So helping you in the moment, but also just like a good chess player, looking a few pieces down the road to get you thinking about that early on. At the same time, we all understand entrepreneurs sometimes have to move extremely quickly. So it's a matter of risk management, risk calculation. Our job is not to fight over every single comma. Our job is to let you know where the pitfalls are, to draft something that's going to meet your needs and allow you to sleep at night, basically, while you go off and focus on growing the business. And a big part of that is building a good relationship with our CEOs, our company founders, our clients. It's a building a relationship of trust and being able to explain things in plain English, not using Latin phrases or referring to court doctrine, etc. I remember being a senior associate at a big firm in DC, and we had a wonderkind she was extremely bright, top on Harvard undergrad, Ivy League law school, had clerked for an appellate court. But she knew how law worked from an academic perspective, not from how to reach a client, and because she hadn't been trained yet.
Sure.
So it's trying to distill that so that you don't get a memo that says, well, on the one hand, this could happen, on the other hand, that could happen. These are the major risks you need to consider. These are what your options are. We're here to help you decide, because ultimately it's a business decision, not a legal decision. We're here to help make that an informed decision so that you can make what you feel is going to be the best decision based on the information that you have. And our job is to be able to distill that and translate it into plain English, the way real people talk, not the way lawyers talk.
Right. Again, being from the accounting and tax side of things, there's lots of times in dealing with business owners, that's one of the number one complaints that I hear from them is that typically professionals are talking in their jargon and the business owner doesn't understand what you're trying to get at.
Your world is very technical too, and I don't always understand what you guys are talking about when you're very technical.
Exactly. Now, I guess your guys' model, is different than a lot of the traditional law firms and things like that. Do you guys work on an as needed basis? Are you on retainers, or is all of that kind of the same?
It depends. I would say our billing model is comparable to most law firms, but we can work with a company within whatever their available budget is, depending upon the nature of what needs to be done. But at the same time, I would also argue that budgeting for your legal costs and expenses is an important part of building a business. It's not the primary one, but it is important, and you have to understand that there are some things it is better to spend a little money on now. It's the old Benjamin Franklin adage, penny wise, pound foolish. We're also a little bit unique in that we don't have associates. So there's no army of associates, there's no junior lawyers, there's nobody fresh out of school. Everybody here has got a minimum of 15 years of experience. The average is more like 20 to 25. I've been at this for about 27, 28 years, not including what I did before law school. And that gives us, I think, a very great ability to be efficient. And because we work with so many different businesses, to understand and get into what are the important issues that you're trying to face, learning from you, and also learning that very quickly and providing business focused, business centric advice. And just about I think all of us have had in-house roles at some points. I've had various in-house roles, including general counsel. My last in-house role, I was general counsel at a contractor here in Maryland. And working with engineers and salespeople and finance and business ops and manufacturing on a daily basis lets you understand what the type of pressures a business is facing and what's important, what isn't important. That may vary from client to client and industry to industry, but the principles are the same. And I think that's a unique perspective that we bring to the table, which is beneficial not just to founders of a new business, whether it's their first business or their third or fourth, but also to establish companies that are perhaps looking to grow into new markets or into new territories, or redefine the way they do things.
Right. Now, what are some of the pitfalls that you see that I'm going to say small business owners are making when it comes to the legal side of things?
Yeah, I think again, as I mentioned briefly, not budgeting for it. Just understanding that there's a certain amount of legal matters that you're going to need to take care of, and that costs money. And it is money well spent, provided it's focused on what the major issues are. There are some, we can cross that bridge when we come to it, type of issues. But I would say getting the relationship right with your founders and your founding investors is going to be very important. Making sure your corporate documents look good, which does not have to cost an arm and a leg, frankly, but we still recommend that you talk to a lawyer instead of just downloading a form from one of these websites that does it, because then you're going to have to fix it later on, or we're going to take a look at it and say, I have a much better form for you that's going to accomplish what you want, because this one isn't doing it. I would also say if you're in an industry that is likely to be regulated, healthcare, or IT with regard to data privacy and data security, understanding what are some of those major regulatory issues that you're going to be subject to. What are the compliance obligations you have? A big part of my practice is also international trade and export control. So for any company that is thinking that's in the technology world, understanding how that may affect your business, even if it's, well, we don't have to spend a lot of money on it now, but we know that as we grow, it's going to become an issue. For example, most people, when they think of exports, they think of exports of physical goods. That's the most obvious, but it's not the only one. Another export scenario could be, we want to hire this person who's on an H-1B visa from another country. Well, the very fact that this person's a foreign national is an export situation. It may not require a license, it may not be regulated, but you better know before he or she starts coding for you, or before they have access to the manufacturing floor, because that's potentially a violation if you don't take care of it. So it's understanding what are the major buckets that you need to think about now, what will you need to think about as you grow, and figuring how you're going to budget and account for that. But I think we do things very efficiently as well, and I think that's something that our clients really appreciate. So when I talk to a new client, one thing I like to ask is, what are you focused on now? What is coming down the pike in the next 3 months? And then how do you want to see your business evolving in 6 months? When I hear those types of things, getting into a dialogue, that lets me spot the issues, as we lawyers do. That's a big part of what we do. We help spot the issues and help manage the risk of those issues. So getting a better understanding for that helps me deal with a founder, a CEO, or an executive VP, or chief operations officer, what have you, and say, all right, based on what you've told me, here's what I think you need to consider right now. Here's what I think we can park. And here's something that you should think about budgeting, planning for in the future. So I think also sales for startup companies is extremely important. Bringing in that first dollar, and getting past getting to that positive point in the hockey stick chart, as they say. So they're going to move a lot faster, and they're not going to have they're going to need you sometimes to turn things around on a dime, spot what are the major issues, and say, don't sweat the small stuff. Especially with a smaller company, maybe they don't care as much about governing law, as long as they're not exposed to a really risky jurisdiction. So you don't fight on that one. You say, look, these are the 3 or 4 pitfalls that you need to address, because the sales folks and the business leaders will say, we need to have that revenue grow so that we can grow our operations or attract more investment. And if you slow them down on that, you're not adding value. So we have to be able to add value to what our clients need. What are their objectives, not our objectives?
Right. I mean, I think I've been doing this on my own for 20 years, 25 years now. And it is always the businesses when they start out, everybody's trying to do everything on such a shoestring budget. And I think that many of them do make the mistakes of not setting things up properly from the beginning, legally, wise, but then also from an accounting and tax standpoint. And then, like you said, I mean, it costs so much more for us to fix it, on the back end. I guess with so much AI that is out there, and because of these websites that are out there that try to do a lot of this stuff that you and I do, kind of where do you see this going? I mean, I think that the way that you guys do things is definitely unique, in the fact that I guess it's one of those things, the show Boston Legal, and how you used to go in and see the big, monstrous, buildings and high dollar and everything else. We're
They're
not
still
seeing
there.
that with you guys,
No.
which is, kind of refreshing because,
I'm in my home office
right,
and I've got LED lights, so you're not helping me keep the lights on. So
right.
absolutely. I've made it as comfortable and as professional looking as I possibly can,
Right,
particularly what's in webcam review.
right.
But it is true. But I mean, you raise an interesting point about technology. And you look, for some folks, if you're a one-person consulting shop and you're doing a lot of local work, you may not need a full-fledged attorney all the time. I mean, it's always a good idea to consult with one when you're considering a major operation, something new, a major expansion, or you're working with a different type of client business that you've never worked with before, to see what are some of the pitfalls. But for folks like that, maybe a LegalZoom is okay to do their articles of organization, or they can register their own business. It's a one-person shop. But I think when it comes to things like artificial intelligence, I do think it's here to stay. It's still evolving, not fully reliable yet. And there are some people who have learned in multiple professions, including the legal ones, who've learned the hard way that it's not
Right.
fully reliable. But it is a tool that is going to change the game in the same way that robotics changed manufacturing. Um, and I think it's just going to be a different type of game that we will be playing, and we just have to learn from it. So they are tools that can add value in certain contexts, perhaps in document reviews or things of that nature. But in terms of analysis, I would not, particularly right now, I would not want to rely on that. If it's something that helps spark initial research to point somebody in the right direction,
Mhm.
I think those are some of the values. And even the name artificial intelligence is really a misnomer, because we're still talking about narrowband AI. The broader AI is still very far away, regardless of what some of the Pollyanna optimists, I think, discuss. Although one of my partners, Caroline McCaffrey, who is a real expert on AI, is far more eloquent on this than I am. But the tools are there, they are growing, and with these tools, introduction into the marketplace and into a variety of industries, come, guess what? New legal issues,
Right.
ownership of data. Can you train your large language model? Can you train your model on data freely, or do you need a license from someone? I believe it was Reddit that recently said you cannot just put out a blanket notice. The data, the information that's on our platform is ours, and if you want to use it to train your AI model, you better have a license, or we're going to come after you.
Hmm.
So in terms of intellectual property law, that is changing. In terms of reps and warranties in purchase and sale agreements and mergers and acquisitions, something else I also do, and that I think we do very, very well, particularly for private companies that are looking for strategic acquisitions, whether it's of know-how or assets or technology or market growth. So there are every new thing that comes down the road can help, but it also comes with a whole host of new issues that will have to be understood, particularly by the next generation of lawyers. And my advice always to somebody who's thinking about going to law school: learn computer coding as well,
Mhm.
because that is you can't escape the importance of IT and software and computer issues, no matter what kind of law you practice.
Right. Right. Um,
I hated coding, by the way, and when I
oh,
was in
yeah.
engineering school, I was not very good at it either. So, but it's changed quite a bit since then. I understand.
Yeah. Um, i- in going through, I guess at the beginning, again, obviously there's the new documents that you need. I guess how often do you recommend with your clients that they meet with you? I mean, obviously, we'll have the things that'll come up because of, either being sued or needing to sue someone or anything like that. But how often do you recommend that your clients meet with you to review their documents, their contracts, their, the corporate documents and things like that to make sure that they're staying in compliance?
That's a good point. And I would say, and I hate to use these two words, but they're the lawyer's fallback. It's always, it depends.
Right.
And so partially it does depend on the nature of the business and what the issues are. I mean, I would say you probably don't have to review your corporate documents on an extremely frequent basis unless you are looking at a major investment or an acquisition or a divestiture or bringing on a strategic investor, for example, somebody that can help you. So, I mean, if you're in the sports marketing business and you've got a strategic investor, whether it's a company or an individual who's been in that business for 30 years and can open doors, then maybe you need to look at those types of things. I would say part of that's also being in lockstep with your tax and accounting advisor as well. That's very important, and it's important that an attorney not only have a good relationship with the client, but also with the client's tax advisors, particularly if they're external, so that we both understand, what the different pressures are. And there's folks that I work with, I absolutely love to, who are really great, and we work together on a number of clients, fortunately. But I would say, when you're looking at things like commercial contracts, whether they are sales agreements or vendor agreements, you want to at least have a good initial review to the extent you're able to use the other side to work from your documents. Not always possible, depending upon leverage and who it is you're dealing business
Right.
with. You want to do a contract with Microsoft or Walmart, you're going to use their documents.
Yeah.
And then it's just important to understand what's in there. But
Right.
as you grow, and your leverage in other areas will also grow. So making sure that you're current, having a look at those once a year is very good. Depending upon the regulatory obligations to which you're subject, helping a client to develop a compliance program and a method for doing an internal audit, an internal review of that compliance, as well as that external review is important too. I mean, I would say, just generally speaking, at a bare minimum, once a year to check in on the major issues that you feel are sort of established and written in stone. Just like when a company is looking at corporate strategy, I remember a business class, and there were certain elements of business strategy. And if any one of these particular elements changes, then you need to go back and take a look at it. Don't just do it on an annual basis and an annual basis only. Having said that, in order to be able to provide good advice, I think it's beneficial for an attorney to be able to check in with your clients on a regular basis and not always say, well, I need to bill a half an hour, I better call my client. No, I haven't heard from him in a while. What's going on? What initiatives do you have? Is there anything I can help you with? Because it's not always just a question of, I need to keep my client from getting sued. It's maybe they're thinking about expanding into a new territory or into a new vertical, or engaging a contract manufacturer to make their products, outsourcing some of that. And there's a whole host of issues that go with those types of things that take a while. If you want to engage a contract manufacturer to make your products for you, you're not going to be able to get all of that done in 2 weeks. There's a fair amount of business due diligence, let alone the legal matters, that have to be addressed first. And there's the sourcing. And I think an attorney who's had that business experience as well as the legal experience can add value there. And that's why it's beneficial for us as counsel to check in on our clients to see how they're doing and what they're up to. And they may say, status quo, everything's fine, it's great, we'll call you when we need you. Okay, fine. Then I let it go quiet for a month or two and just check in so they remember that I'm here and I'm ready to help if and when needed.
Right.
But I would say you should check in, a business should check in no less than once a year, but more likely a new business once a quarter, is just a good rule of thumb. Have that check in, put something on the calendar. Say, hey, can we talk? Here's what's going on. Anything we need to think about? Or we're thinking about doing X 3 months from now. What should we be thinking about? Start to provide that strategic advice, to provide that trusted advice, be that trusted advisor. One thing we like to say at our firm, we like to say we're an easy to do business with law firm. We have a little hashtag for that people see on LinkedIn, ETDBW. I think I spelled that right. But and we do pride ourselves on being an easy to do business with law firm, to translate those tough concepts, to help clients look down the road and determine what is a major issue for them to consider and what's the small stuff that they don't need to sweat.
Right, right. Um, as we're, coming more towards the year end, a lot of people with the business ownership and having to register that. Where do you see, I mean, because there's been a lot of talk about it, and that there was thoughts that this was going to be eliminated before the end of the year,
Mhm.
privacy reasons, so forth and so on. Where do you see that?
Are you talking about the Corporate Transparency Act and the
Yes,
beneficial ownership
correct,
registration? Yes.
correct.
No, that's a great subject because no sooner did it pass into law than it was challenged, uh,
Hmm.
but it was only stayed with regard to the challengers. So it was not a blanket stay of the law.
Right.
So that still applies. And so if you are in business, it is something to be familiar with. And frankly, this is another area where I think where we add value because some of my partners and I have come up with basically a very simple explanation of what it is and how it works. And the overwhelming majority of the companies, frankly, are able to file the information themselves and will even tell you how to do it and where to go. We don't want to charge people nickel and dime them for things that they're absolutely capable of because that doesn't add value and it also doesn't build trust. You
Yeah.
know, if somebody wants us to look it over, say, "Look, hey, we're about to click the button. Are you sure this is right?" We'll do that and we can do that efficiently as well. But we want you to spend money where you need to spend money. And if there's things that you can do yourself or have, your internal finance department, for example, do that. But I think it's a very good question because a fair number of these things are being driven by, I think, national and economic security concerns,
Hmm.
which touches a bit into the international trade world. So, for example, in mergers and acquisitions, you're seeing more CFIUS reviews among larger companies. And CFIUS, for those of your audience who don't know, is the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, which is a multidisciplinary agency takes a look, or a multidisciplinary committee, excuse me, made up among a number of agencies that reviews M&A transactions where there are foreign owners, depending on where they're from. And is that transaction going to have a negative impact on national or economic security? There's also even reverse rules now, particularly dealing with China, for example, on outbound investments from the United States into foreign companies that one has to be concerned about. And I think there is a greater push for transparency and trying to figure out who's behind all these different companies, even if it's just a relatively small LLC. The smaller the company, I believe overall the requirements are fewer. There's certainly less information that has to be provided, but it does raise a number of interesting issues. It will be a good one to follow to see the extent to which it's allowed to continue in its current form, or if there are some modifications that are required, if it has to go back partially to the drawing board. But there is a greater desire for transparency in some of these issues that normally were only applicable to public companies,
Right,
but now they're trying to get into the private market to find out who owns what. So
right.
it's something to watch.
Yeah. What, we covered a bunch of stuff here real quick.
Mhm.
What have I not asked you you wish I had?
Um,
I know that's pretty broad there because
what
there's
should
a ton of stuff.
an entrepreneur expect from their attorney, especially somebody who's on their first business?
First go around, yeah.
And I will say this as well because you made some very good points earlier. I myself, for a while, I had my own law practice. I was also a partner in a non-legal business that we tried, and it wasn't a long-term success, but I learned an awful lot through the process. So I think there's a couple of things at a bare minimum that you want to understand from your lawyer when you're interviewing different counsels. One is what's your process? I mean, is there a fit here? Is my way as an entrepreneur, is my way of working, going to work with the lawyer? Am I going to be happy with that? So fit, I think, is important. What's your experience on the kind of issues and the industries in which I'm working? So if I'm building a business to make um, office furniture, have you done consumer and retail work and not just general contracts? If all you've done is IT and defense industry work, then you're probably not going to be the best fit. Um, how long have you been doing it? And, are you willing to invest the time to get to know my business as I grow? Are you willing to invest in that relationship? So I think those are some of the key issues that entrepreneurs should be asking from their attorneys. And how do they work? How do they staff a matter? If you do decide to go with a traditional brick and mortar firm, and there are some fantastic ones out there, get an idea of how they work. How many associates are going to be put on a job? Am I going to be nickel and dimed for every Xerox copy that is made?
Right.
Am I going to be charged to train somebody fresh out of law school? Or how does it work? And how do you staff the issues? How do you manage it and make sure that I'm not being billed for 4 attorneys at once? For example, a partner has to review the work of the associates. That's the way the traditional model works, and should. At the same time, there's an efficiency there. And will you respond to me, generally speaking, in the time frame that I need a response?
Yeah, I think that that's something that's important for a business owner, especially new coming into it. Not only ask these questions of their
Mhm.
attorney, but their CPA, their business coach, their
Absolutely.
insurance broker, any other professional that they have that they're building their team with. They
Mhm.
should be asking these type of questions too, to make sure. Because again, it's one of those things where, and I'm sure over your time you've probably have fired clients also because of the fact that it's not the right fit. And it's like, you're going to do them a disservice because it's not the right fit, even though you try as hard as you can. Sometimes it doesn't work. So I think that making sure that there's that right fit and that everybody's comfortable is extremely important.
It's exactly. It is extremely rare that things like that happen, but as you say, they do. And same on the entrepreneur side. They
Right.
should feel free to say, look, this is just isn't a good fit. Um, I guess the only other thing I would say about that is, if you don't know something, and this goes equally for the entrepreneur as well as the attorney, be willing to admit that.
Right.
If I don't understand an acronym or a term, or there's something that I'm not particularly familiar with, I will raise my hand and say, I'm sorry, what are we talking about here? Or I don't get this. And most of the time, I get it then and I can figure it out. Or if on those other occasions where I feel I shouldn't be the one handling this, my partner who handles these types of things, I would like to pass this matter over to her because
Sure.
she is the noted subject matter expert, and what you're talking about is rather complex. So if you're okay with that, I'd let her handle it, whether it's an employment matter or artificial intelligence or data privacy or something else that I personally don't deal with on a daily basis, but
Right.
our firm has a strong capability in. Or if it's a tax issue and we have to refer you to a tax firm, and we know
Mhm.
some very good ones that we work with as well who are equally business focused and business friendly, then that's what we ought to do. At the same time, we also like to work with clients who admit they don't know what they don't know as well. And we're not school marms, we're not here to lecture, but we're here to learn and grow together in
Right.
many ways. That is in the best interest, I think, of the business, but also of a good, healthy attorney-client relationship.
I agree. Totally agree. Mike, I appreciate your time today. I think
No,
that
it's a lot of
that
fun,
you've,
Garrett. Thank you for having
given the listeners a lot to think about, and
me.
to understand that there is a firm like yours that's out there, that may be a little bit different, uh,
Hmm.
for people, but you're able to support them in the way that they need.
Thank you. And if I can just do a quick plug, we are at www.outsidegc.com. If you want to learn more about me and my partners, how we work and what our approach is, and figure out if we're a good fit for you and if we can help you grow your business, we'd love to do it. There's nothing I like more than helping people achieve their objectives and their goals in life.
Great. Thank you again for your time. Much
My pleasure.
appreciated. Everybody, this week, our guest was Michael Mendelson, and he is a partner with Outside GC, and I'll see you guys next week.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.